All right, let's talk about something you probably never saw coming. English wine. Yeah, I know. When you think of England, you probably think of rainy days, not vineyards. But believe it or not, England is becoming a serious powerhouse in the wine world. And the story of how that happened is just, well, it's incredible. So let's get into it. So, just how big of a deal is this? Well, let's just start with a number. In the last 10 years, the amount of land covered by vineyards in Great Britain has exploded by 160%. And we're not talking about a slow, gradual thing here. This is a full-on rush. And with all that new land for grapes, you get a whole lot more wine. In 2018, vineyards in England and Wales churned out a record-smashing 15.6 million bottles. Now, to give you some perspective, the old record from just 2014 was 9 million. That's a huge jump in a really short amount of time. So you have to ask, how did this happen? How on earth did English wine go from being, a quirky hobby for a few people to a genuine contender on the world stage? Well, that's the story we're going to unpack.
Now, let's keep things in perspective for a second. Even with all that growth, we're talking about roughly 3,000 hectares. It's still pretty small compared to the giants of the wine world. But here's the interesting part. That puts England in the same ballpark as some really prestigious high-end regions like the Sonoma Coast in the US or Savoie in France. The key takeaway here is to think quality over quantity. Think boutique, not mass market.
But this whole thing isn't exactly brand new. Winemaking in England actually has some surprisingly deep roots. The Romans were the first to plant vines here, and way back in 1086, the Doomsday Book listed over 40 vineyards. Of course, the industry had its ups and downs for a few centuries, but the modern revival really kicked off in the 1970s, paving the way for that massive harvest we saw in 2018.
Okay, so we know what's happening, but let's get to the how. What is the secret ingredient here? How did England's famously cool and drizzly climate somehow become its greatest strength?
This is the big question, right? It's the one everyone asks. How is a country known for its gray skies and, let's be honest, constant drizzle, producing award-winning wine? Well, the answer is this kind of perfect storm of two really specific factors.
First, you've got this unique little microclimate down in the southeast, which gets a nice warming effect from the Gulf Stream. But second, and this right here is the real game changer, it's the soil. Big parts of southern England are sitting on top of a massive layer of chalky, limestone-rich soil. And if that sounds familiar to you, well, it should.
Because it's pretty much the exact same geological layer of soil that you find in the Champagne region of France. I mean, we are talking about the same foundation that produces the most famous sparkling wine in the entire world. This is England's ace in the hole.
So it makes perfect sense that most of the vineyards are clustered together in what people are calling the sparkling wine crescent. We're talking about those southern counties, Kent, Sussex, Surrey, Hampshire, that get the most sun and sit right on top of that special chalky soil. It's the perfect combination.
All right, so we've talked about the climate and the soil, but what about the stuff that really matters? What's actually in the bottle? Let's talk about the wine itself. The star of the show, without a doubt, is English sparkling wine. And this isn't just any old fizzy wine. It's made using the traditional method. That's the really intensive, time-consuming process where the wine gets its bubbles from a second fermentation right inside the bottle. The same way they make champagne. It's that method, plus the high acidity grapes from the cool climate, that creates something truly special. And if you look at the grapes they're using, does this trio look familiar? Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. Yep, the three classic, noble grapes of Champagne. That is absolutely not a coincidence. English winemakers planted these on purpose to make that world-class sparkling wine. But it's not all bubbles. They also grow some other cool grapes, like Bacchus, which makes these amazing, crisp, aromatic still white wines.
So what does it all taste like? Well, because of that cool climate and chalky soil, the wines are often described as super zingy and zesty, with this fantastic, sharp acidity. But what's cool is they also have this character that's surprisingly warming, and they're often just bursting with fruit. They're not trying to be champagne copies. They've got their own delicious, inviting personality.
Okay, so the quality is there, no question. But what's next? What does the future look like? How does English wine go from being this amazing local secret to a real player on the global stage? This chart tells you pretty much everything you need to know. A whopping 96% of all English wine is drunk right there, in the UK. That means only a tiny 4% actually gets exported. So while its reputation is blowing up, the international market is still this huge, wide-open opportunity just waiting to be tapped. But check out where that little 4% is going. The top buyers are the US, Scandinavia, and Japan. Now, these aren't just random countries. These are some of the most picky and sophisticated wine markets in the world. The fact that they're buying English wine, well, that says a lot about the quality. And if you need one final, undeniable piece of proof that English wine is the real deal, this is it. It's one thing to get good reviews. It's a whole other thing when one of the most famous champagne houses, Taittinger, decides to buy a huge plot of land in Kent to start making their own English sparkling wine. When champagne itself moves into your neighborhood, you know you're doing something right.
So let's recap. We've seen crazy growth, a unique climate, and soil that's a mirror image of champagne, and a quality so high that even the French are buying in. The whole industry is just set to get bigger and better. Which really only leaves one question, doesn't it? The next time you're celebrating something, could that glass of fizz in your hand be English? I think it's definitely worth finding out.